It raises the question of how do you navigate the choice? When you see this huge array of different religions on offer, how do you choose what to believe? How do you know what to believe? And one answer that I think I hear increasingly from many corners of society, and certainly coming through in the mass media very commonly, is the idea that, maybe the thing to do is just affirm that all the great religions of the world are essentially the same. That there are many paths to God. Believe whatever you want as long as you're sincere, and all these kind of ideas we hear in the culture. Whatever you do, don't tell other people that they're wrong, and so on and so forth. Now, I've got a friend who teaches at the University of Toronto back home, and he very much believes this idea. He very much believes the idea that all religions are essentially the same. And the metaphor he likes to use with his students, and I remember him once sharing this with me over a cup of coffee, and the metaphor that my friend at the University of Toronto likes to use is he says that, it's helpful to imagine, he once said to me, all the religions of the world as being a bit like paths up a mountain. There on the top of the mountain is a God. And all the different religions in the world are just like paths up the mountain. And there's the Buddhist path, and the Christian path, and the Muslim path, and the Hindu path, and so on and so forth. Presumably the atheist path goes just round and round the bottom and doesn't go anywhere. But nevertheless, it's a lovely metaphor. And I remember him sort of sharing it with me and sort of smiling, kind of sort of philosophically and wisely at me over his cup of coffee and, waiting for my reaction. And I let him finish his little story. And then I said, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a very pretty illustration. I said, but there's just one problem. The problem for me is this. I'm a mountain climber. My hobby is climbing mountains. It's one of the reasons I moved to Ontario in Canada. The mighty mountain ranges we have there. Few people who know Canada. That's very funny. The highest thing in Ontario is about 900 feet. But yeah, I'm a mountain climber. I climb mountains as a hobby. And I said to my friend, I said, here's the thing. I can confidently tell you that every path does not lead to the top of the mountain. Some paths do indeed just go round and round the bottom. Some paths don't get outside the parking lot. They just go to the washroom. Some paths lead to the tea shop. Some paths end in massive cliffs and a rocky death because they were built by rock climbers. And quite frankly, rock climbers are the most insane people on the planet. And so on and so on. Every path does not lead to the top of the mountain. In fact, if you are lost on a mountain when the fog comes down and you've forgotten your map and your compass and your GPS has stopped working, simply picking a path at random and following it is probably going to end up in you being a small pizza-shaped stain at the bottom of the mountain. It's not a way to wisdom so much as a way to certain death. And then I asked him another question. I said, but just for a minute though, let me entertain your idea. Tell me, I said to him, where would you have to be standing in order to see that every path leads to the top of the mountain? Well, he thought about it for a moment and he said, I think I see your problem. Yeah, you'd have to be standing at the top of the mountain, wouldn't you? I said, no, Jeff, it's worse than that. Because when you're on the top of the mountain, when you're at the summit, you can't see where all the paths go because they often disappear over the edge. The only place you could be to see that every path leads to the top of the mountain, you'd have to be floating several hundred or even several thousand feet above it, doing a kind of Google Earth type view. Now, given that you said that God is the summit of the mountain, where precisely are you located, and who on earth do you think you are? He hasn't used that illustration in some time since we had that conversation.